Yeah, that's great.
I'll just
So
keep it small.
yeah, that's fine, Yuri. That's fine. Everyone can see it, and that'll be terrific. So basically, what we're going to cover tonight is just everything that we hit on the race service meeting that was in Lillehammer, October 17th. So a lot of these slides are from our actual race service meeting. Next slide, please. The big takeaway for everybody is, we're in a whole new world right now with race performance waxes, and we've been testing since 2019, and from 2021 we've been 100% fluoro-free as a race service department. So we're going on 3 years of fluoro-free race product, and we've got a lot of good products out there in the marketplace. There's a lot of interesting things going on right now with FIS and fluoro and testing, and I'll get into that at the end. But the point that I want to make here is we've been going really hard with race service for 3 years, working with our chemists and our race service department to provide competitive products to the World Cup and below athletes that are very high quality right now. Next slide. So this machine is called the Tracker, and I'm guessing that we'll see these as we go through the competition season in the future. It's about $30,000 to build. It was a collaboration with a bunch of companies and FIS to basically detect fluoro-treated skis, and they are at the highest level right now. They'll work down as things get more affordable. This is the type of equipment that we'll be able to test skis on. One thing that isn't written here on the slide that I think is really important, at the race service meeting, we had a number of technicians from Sweden, Norway, and we were sharing some stories of hot tests with fluoro. And it's really important, and we'll cover this later on brushes because that was a big part of the question. And many of you may have followed some alpine news that we had a female alpine skier and her skis tested hot, and that was the result of a rotocork that hadn't been swapped out. So really important to understand that these machines are extremely accurate, and ski ties can contaminate. Ski bags that have debris in them can produce a hot ski. Wall ties that we use in our wax cabins when we travel are something to be changed out. Obviously, the brushes and the rotos are a huge contaminating factor, and we'll cover more on that. It's also important to understand that grinding is not necessarily a way to get rid of fluoro out of the base. There is a term called blooming, where the fluorocarbons go deep in the base and tend to migrate towards oxygen, and they will come out of the ski base. So there's really one way to clean the skis and get them fluoro-free, and we'll cover that at the tail end of this, because that seems to be the big question. It's very easy to do, and you won't have any risk of testing hot on skis. Next slide. So again, this is feedback from our Nordic Biathlon and Ski Classic race service staff. So we've got a lot of folks out there on snow a good chunk of the year, testing and retesting formulas, and also testing for fluoros, and making sure that with FIS that ski tracker is providing accurate information. Next slide. This is the race service schedule that we're doing in terms of race service support and glide and kick testing throughout the course of the season. Obviously, this doesn't cover Alpine, but we've got a pretty dedicated staff on the World Cup, and you can see by this schedule, there's definitely a lot of folks out there doing a lot of hard work and sharing that with the general public. I think it's important to understand that as of recently, we're really pushing out as much information as possible. It used to be a lot more closed door during the previous era, but the information is readily available to you. And one thing I like to identify when we're doing these clinics is get to know one line really well. Obviously, full disclosure, I work for Swix. I relied on Swix before I was an employee of Swix when I was working race service. And you want to be confident in the brand that you're using. And I would encourage anybody, start with knowing one line. And then if you want to broaden your horizons, that's fine. But I think that it's important to understand that right now we're literally in a new era where we spent 30 years working fluoro technology, and now that we're in this new fluoro-free world, we've been working at it diligently for 3 years. And besides this schedule, we have about 65 technicians that are constantly getting on new formulas and providing test data for the general public. Next slide. This one, I wanted to kind of just get into it briefly. It's not specific to wax, but I think it's really important to understand what Swix is doing as a race service organization here in the States. This is my second time back with Swix. I took about a 6-year hiatus from them. But what's great about the new organization is we've got direct access to everybody over there. Before my Swix, it was the information wasn't free flowing as much. It was very difficult to get information on race service, and now that's completely changed. We're also getting more exposure to sustainability and our product development folks. So myself and Mike Beers, who works on the Alpine side, we're getting feedback from athletes, coaches, and we've got a direct channel to all the product managers, whether that be soft goods, hard goods, wax, tools in Norway. So the culture has changed dramatically, and it's really for the better in terms of flow of information. Next slide, please. So looks like that slide might have moved out of order, but no problem. Next slide. So this is our new wax line, and it's interesting that you've got the top speed line at the high end of the pinnacle, and then you've got high speed, and then you've got the PS line. PS line, just to kind of rule out what you have to learn and don't learn. PS is our CH line. So that's essentially our CH line from years past. The HS and the TS, those are completely new lines for us. What's really important to understand, I get a lot of questions on, well, if competition is the most important thing, do I just need to be at TS and over HS? And what I want to say is the new wax line isn't about necessarily the price point. It's about testing with different applications for the conditions. And oftentimes the HS product line runs as good or better than the TS line. So don't feel like if you're in HS, it's not going to test very well. And oftentimes the HS, specifically HS8 liquid is an HS10 liquid, are top performers on the World Cup with our glide tests, and I'll share with you some test data to expand on that. Next slide. So yeah, TS, that's our premium race line, but again, works in different conditions over HS. don't be fooled by thinking you have to be in TS. That's all I'm going to say on that. Next slide. TSP, a lot of questions on this. This is not an answer to the fluoro powders that we had. The TSP is a granulated form of the block. So it's the wax form. Basically, what we had to do to maintain the durability factor is the waxes need to be much harder. So even in the 8s and the 10s, those waxes that typically were very soft are extremely hard now. So the powder form works a little bit better with the iron. But just to answer the question that I get all the time is the powder is no different than the block form. It's just granulated and a little bit easier to work with the iron with the higher iron temperatures. Next slide. TS liquids. This is a new product for us. And basically, you can apply this directly onto the ski in conjunction with a base coat that is ironed in. You can also apply with a felt if you were trying to extend maximum exposure in terms of limiting waste. You can apply to a cork that has fleece on it. One thing that's important to talk about with the TS liquids is the way I like to do it. I like to apply it with the fleece that's on the cork. And to avoid contamination and not have an accurate test, it's not expensive, but I basically write on all my corks with a Sharpie on the side what liquid I'm actually using to apply that. So I'll spray that liquid directly to my fleece cork, and then I'll apply that through a hand application. It tends to limit any waste, and I can control the application of that liquid. Next slide. So HS high speed line, we've got that in wax and liquids, not the same formula, same as TS, not the same formula between the hard wax powders and liquid. So liquids, a lot of questions on durability. 20 kilometers with roto wool application, and I'll have a slide to support that. But very popular items in sprint format when you're working out in the stadium and you're trying to freshen up skis in between heats. The liquids are a very popular way to go. And again, I can't emphasize enough that the HS liquids are performing extremely well, and do not assume that the TS will outperform HS, because that's not the case. Next slide. And this is just our HS waxes. The point here with, as well as with the TS, these waxes are harder. So in years past, an 8 or a 10 was a pretty soft wax, and that is no longer the case. It's much harder. Again, that's to increase the durability. You're looking at 150 degrees Celsius with the 10, and it just basically all the waxes are requiring a higher iron temperature. So you want to make sure you've got a good iron for working with these new waxes. Next slide. And the PS, as I mentioned, you guys are all familiar with our CH line. It's rebranded, and it's essentially our CH line with the addition of 5 in there for colder temperatures. Next slide. Next slide, Marathon, please. Yeah, so this is a popular one, and a lot of the questions were on distance racing and what were the differences between the block formation and the powder formation. Just like with the top speed powders, the powder here is simply a granulated form of the block. Some people prefer, again, it depends on snow conditions and how the skis are running, but you can either apply that with an iron in the powder, or you can apply that Marathon with Roto-Wool. And white is for new snow conditions, and black, just as like in the past, is for more contaminated snow, more debris and more contaminants in the snow. So that's the difference there. What we'll see is this is a new formula. So if you use Marathon in the past, we've got a new formula, and that's new this year. And next slide will show that data. So I can't see the far right portion of that screen because it's got some of the participants, but basically it shares with you the test data from this new formula. One thing that is pretty impressive is there's a lot of data collection that goes into our testing of these new formulas, and we're looking for strong results, winning results over a broad area of conditions, and that's when we'll decide, make a decision to move to a new formula. But the Marathon that we have this year is an entirely new formula than what we've had in the past. If you do have the old Marathon, I wouldn't necessarily discard it and only use this. I can provide you with some follow-on data for where the Marathon that you have currently in your wax box, where it's optimal, and you can keep this slide to understand where it's performing in optimal conditions right now. Next slide. I don't know, Yuri, if you can play that, but basically what this does is it covers if you can't, no worries, but basically a lot of questions on how to apply with Roto-Wool, and that's what this video does. You'll see that it's pretty straightforward, but I'll let you guys watch that and we'll go from there. He's never seen those. So all these videos are online, and I have a slide at the back to turn you on to all our YouTube channel. But everything from how to Roto-Wool with Marathon, with turbos, iron temperatures, everything that you could possibly imagine is all online. So you've got resources and you can check that out. But this is a big one. The big question is Roto-Wool or iron in. And the big takeaway is they test differently. So on any given day, you should, if you're going to allocate testing resources, try both applications. And there's a slide that'll be further in there, but the durability on the Roto-Wool is pretty impressive. Next slide. Polar. So cold conditions, running very well. Probably the most popular formula on that is in the powder. Again, because it's such a hard wax to work with, the powder is the most preferred product on that Polar line, but again, extremely cold conditions. Next slide. So the I-84, you guys have all seen these products, the base cleaners, the citrus solvents, the hand cleaner. You guys all know this. The only thing that I want to call out in this slide is, as we're trying to have fluoro-free skis, remember that in the I-84 product line from years past, there was actually fluoro in it because it bonded with fluoro. So you want to make sure you have the new, in that lower left corner, there's a fluoro-free icon. You want to make sure you have the right Glide Wax cleaner. That's the only takeaway here. Next slide. Next slide. So here's the big one. So if we've got high schools that are trying to extend their wax budget, this is a really excellent way to spread out your wax budget and make that dollar go long. These are our turbo blocks, and they're extremely they're testing extremely well, especially with the roto wool and the roto fleece. The 5 and the 6, those are products that they do use with rotocork still, just to get higher heat in the base, but the durability and the amount of applications you get on this block is pretty stunning. When we were at the race service meeting, Morton had a 6 block of turbo, and it looked like it was brand new, and he had been working with that block for quite some time. So it's a great top coat, again, for 10-15 kilometers. You get a lot of durability out of there. Also good in that sprint format. Very easy to work with a form in roto wool or roto fleece. There you can see it's called out. They have more success with the roto wool application, but I find from personal use, it's good to test both the fleece and the roto wool. Just like on the liquids, where I have my corks with the product that I'm applying, and I keep that clean, you do want to invest in roto wools and roto fleeces that are specific to those products, so you're not contaminating your test results. Next slide, please. The PS liquids, this is our training wax line, and new is the liquid forms of this. So we did have a couple of waxes last year in liquid, but now we have the full line from 6 through 10. And that is a great way if you're trying to keep heat off your base, or you've got a huge high school team and you want to keep skis running well, but don't want to get into the wax cabin every day with 60 kids. This is a great way to keep skis running well and keeping them clean and not picking up contaminants. Next slide. The base protection liquid, this product was developed really for race service, and it was a way to, again, keep heat off the skis, and when there wasn't a lot of time, get a protective coat of wax on skis before travel. So if you're trying to save some time, it's a great way to go. You can just scrape, brush, and then put the wax of the day on there, but it's a nice, quick, easy way to protect the base. Next slide. So this one is the big one. This is the next step up from the I-84 cleaner. It actually has wax in the cleaner, and it's a great way to use a mild solvent when we're cleaning bases to get flora out of the ski base. This is also used on the World Cup. They used it all last year. They were testing it. This is a great way to zero out a ski without doing a hot wax. So if you're doing multiple tests, you can zero out a ski with just rubbing this on with some Fiberline and brushing out. But it's a huge cost saver, and it's also less abrasive than the I-84, but still effective at cleaning the base. It's actually available now. We're bringing it in. It just became available. Next slide. This one, this slide is really for all you coaches and athletes out there that want, just a little refresher as to where to use certain products. Morton put that in his slide deck, and I just thought that was a helpful little slide to kind of take a look at if you're learning the line or just getting on board. It's a good little disclaimer for where to use what in what conditions. Pretty helpful. Next slide. Next slide. So one thing that's really important, and again, I work for Swix. I use Swix products. I used Swix before I was with Swix. It really doesn't matter what what brand you're choosing to go with. I think that it's really important to understand that, at least for our line, our waxes are harder. And they're harder because without the fluorine, we needed to increase durability and not pick up contaminants and have the skis slow. So our formulation on our glide waxes, it's just a harder wax. So it requires a higher temperature, and having a good iron, again, is a really important thing right now, is something that can melt those harder waxes. You're looking at 150 to 160 Celsius. So you want to have a decent iron when you're working with these newer waxes. Next slide. The roto brushes, we've got the 70s that are being used right now. Roto fleece, the roto wools are those are like our two most popular roto brushes right now. And then in the steel brush, I just want to note to you guys out there, you don't need to dull this one or sand it down. It comes pre-sanded. So right out of the package, you can use that steel roto brush. Just remember to use, especially with steel, you want to make sure you have iPro in case something comes undone, and you just want to avoid any contact with the eyes. You can have an issue with that. So next slide. Next slide, Yuri. Oh, there you go. No, you got it. Thank you. The suction system, I just want to call this one out. It's pretty huge. I got to use it over in Norway, and the follow-on slide will show the effectiveness of the roto brush cover, but we've got it for the iron and the roto brush cover, and it does a phenomenal job. Even if you're not using something that's harmful or dangerous or something you don't want in your eyes or in your face. Even if you have a respirator, it's just really good to keep your wax area clean. And that roto brush is just awesome. It's machined on the inside. It's got channels not just in one spot, but along the entire cover. So it does a great job keeping all the dust and particulate out of the air. As we all know, we've got athletes coming into the cabin, so the cleaner we can keep things, the better it is for everybody. I'll let you go to the next slide and play that video. So we've got a black backdrop just to demonstrate what it looks like to run a roto brush, and then we've got the suction system. Yeah, so that says it all. I don't need to address it, but the vacuum system in there is awesome. I've got mine hooked up to a little portable Milwaukee shop vac that's battery operated. So if I'm doing 10, 15 pairs of skis, nothing too huge, I can just roll in without even having a corded vac and work that right off the table. So it's pretty slick, and definitely does a good job keeping things out of the air. Next slide. Basic respirators, we carry all three of these. It doesn't matter what you're working, whether it's wood, wax, fiberglass, you don't want to be breathing these particulates in. So again, we've got 3 different flavors of mask. They all do the job. You just want to have something, and make sure you're keeping all these particulates out of your lungs, and keeping it safe. Next slide. Next slide. So with fluoro, it took us 30 years to get to where we were when everything stopped with fluoro, and we're working with a variety of different elements, and nothing is as effective as fluorine, but there are combinations of other elements that are, and that's what we're working with. Next slide. So basically what this slide shows is you're looking at basically water on the base of a ski, and that's got a structure on it. But essentially, hydrophobic is what we're looking for. And when you deal with different materials, you can literally see the water sit on the ski base in different fashions. That first slide to the left has a very non-hydrophobic treatment on the ski base, and that water sits flat. And then you go to the next middle slide, and you'll see it's a little bit more hydrophobic, still sitting in the structure. And then you go to a very hydrophobic wax, and you can see how that water stands on top of the ski base. Next slide. So this is an important slide, and I'll let you guys all read it after the fact. But the takeaway here is that the layering system of what we used to do in years past doesn't always necessarily provide the best result. So, for example, it might just be a glide wax of the day for that temperature rating, and it might be a liquid on top or a turbo on top, and that's it. There have been several tests where it's just the wax of the day. So a lot of people are going to be naysayers on this, but I'm a firm believer in looking at the test data from the World Cup, and I've got some slides on that and some more talking points on that. But it's not as crazy as it was in the past. You want to have your skis very clean. We've got the products to clean the skis, make sure they're fluoro-free, and make sure your iron is capable of handling higher temperatures. And then you're testing some top coats on top of it, and then that's pretty much it. It's very simple, and more layers is not necessarily better. So it's going to be better for the wax team budget, and you're going to still have great product and test results without spending crazy time in the wax room and more time out coaching and working with the athletes. Next slide. So this one's interesting. There's a lot going on here, and I think it's important to understand that when we test, we're not just going from the wax cabin out to a testing area and testing skis. What we'll do is we're always running the skis and testing them after they have distance on the skis. So it's not just a right out of the wax cabin and onto the test area and collecting data. We're testing those skis and always skiing them. And I'm just going to drink some water here for a sec. That one slide in the lower left corner, the red dotted line that comes in contact with the red solid line, that is roto wool in terms of durability to ironing in. So that roto wool, you can see why it's so popular right now with race service. Is it's a fast, easy, low heat method to apply wax and blocks to a ski base and get crazy durability. And that's at the 20K mark. A lot of times people say, oh, well, you don't get the durability if you're using roto. But this is durability coming in line with ironing at the 20K. And then that lower right picture is a test facility that we use. And those skis get skied 3 kilometer increments, 3 to 5 kilometer increments. And then they retest and retest. So that's how we collect that data. If you want to hit that play button, Yuri, I think some of the Nordies might find that interesting. Maybe not.
No, I can't play it.
Okay, like that's okay. That's all right. Next slide. That's okay. So this is just some of the test data sheet, and I'm gonna try and so the important takeaway here is that going back to what I said earlier, sometimes it's just one application, and sometimes it's just the base layer, and it's not necessarily all these other layers on top. That's what we're finding on our test data, and that's what this slide illustrates, that it wasn't a complex layer of 3 or 4 products. It was actually the glide wax of the day that won the test. Next slide. And this one goes back to what I was speaking about earlier. There's 2 data sheets from our glide wax test, and I just wanted to call out, it supports what I was saying, that the HS line doesn't necessarily, it's not a price breakdown from TS. It actually outperforms TS oftentimes. So don't feel like because it's not as expensive a product, it doesn't test well. And that's what this slide illustrates. I just think it's really important to understand that it's all about testing different applications and working with those liquids. Next slide. And I mentioned earlier that HS8 has been a very, very popular winner in World Cup tests, and that's what this slide calls out. So HS8 is a very cost-effective, high-performance glide wax top coat. Next slide. This one is an example of what we talked about with regard to the durability. So what we're doing here is we're not just testing at the wax cabin test area. We're going out and we're putting skis on, and we're going for durability and longevity, not just right out of the wax cabin. So all these formulas, it's important to understand that our formulas aren't just right out of the wax cabin in the test area. It's with 10, 15, and 20 kilometers under the skis when we're making our final call on formulations. Next slide. So in summary on the wax portion of things, it's pretty straightforward. It's air temperature, not snow temperature on our waxes. It's ironing in that base wax and then testing out different top coats with roto fleece and roto wool. It's pretty straightforward. It's not that complex. It's a very easy system to work. The time in testing is going to be in the application methods. It's not trying to recreate the formulas. It's in the applications. And I can't encourage people enough to spend the money on the roto wools and the roto fleeces, because that's where you're going to see the difference on race day. Next slide. So this was a big one. Yeah, and that's fine. You can stay right there, Yuri. Cleaning of brushes. I'm just going to go from the hip here, because a lot of the questions were about, do I throw brushes out? Do I, what do I do? How do I clean? We've got all the videos on how to clean brushes. Don't throw your brushes out. Those are your good first brushes when you're cleaning fluorocarbons out of your skis, and then you switch to your new brushes, and it's all on video. So you can clean your brushes, but don't worry about throwing them out for race day and race application. Yeah, you do want new brushes, but it's very simple how we clean our brushes and how we clean our skis. And don't throw them away. Just clean them and use them for the first brushing out of your skis, and then have new brushes for your race wax, and you won't have any issues with your skis testing hot. Next slide. So a bunch of the questions I had were, kind of what's Swix doing? Where are we with environmental, with natural products, with fluoro-free? And I just wanted to say there's been a lot of changes at Swix USA and at Swix Global, and it's really for the better. We've got a huge amount of resources that we're working with in that original slide early on in the slide deck, Verena is our sustainability manager, and she's doing a really good job. I get a lot of questions all the time about, like, what are we doing for the environment? Are we green? What's biodegradable? And I think we've not done a good job messaging what we are doing well in the U.S. And some of those questions were in the email that I got earlier. So the other point that's really important to call out is now we have a very direct conduit with Norway, with all the product managers and sustainability. So we're working very closely with them to develop products that are greener, that aren't greenwashed, that we're actually making sure we have the data to back that up. And then the other important point is the U.S. Nordic and Alpine market are extremely important. And as we continue to grow on the world stage with our performance success, the U.S. market is having far more say than it has before in new product development and launch. Next slide. So I talked about Verena and what we're doing with sustainable product. And I know this isn't necessarily about Wax Clinic, but the questions were there. And we're doing it in the area of wax, clothing, and poles today. Next slide. In our aluminum poles, right now, today, as we sit here and talk, over 60% of all our aluminum poles are from recycled aluminum. We don't market that, but we've had a lot of questions from retailers, and we're going to do a better job making sure that that is called out and that the consumer and the retailer is aware of what we're doing with our sustainability story. Next slide. So one of the big things, people are like, oh, what are you doing for plastics? So a lot of times you can't see what we're doing, but in the grip, if you dissected a cork grip, there was a plastic sleeve in there, and Ovar, who's our pole manager, he's working on an entirely new grip that if you took the cork off, it's hardly well, it's not hardly, but it's significantly less plastic in the grip without compromising strength. So we're doing that right now as we speak, and we're working with our suppliers. If the code of conduct that Swix has adopted through BRAV isn't being met, we'll outsource and find a new supplier that can meet those parameters that we're trying to do for our social and environmental mission statement. And next slide is a big one. So biodegradable. This is a big talking point here in the U.S. market, and a lot of companies are saying biodegradable, but they're not necessarily backing it up with documentation. And what I can tell you right now is we're working on new products today, but these products right here are actually biodegradable waxes. Those are the UR waxes, the North waxes, and the PS waxes. And many other waxes are biodegradable, but we're pulling the documentation together that's required by the governing agencies. Next slide. Packaging, that's another big one that I was getting, and I saw a couple questions on that. We're moving towards a recycled cardboard package, so you'll be seeing a different look on all our packaging. We're rolling that out right now with some of our non-competition line, but we've got a pretty deep product line, so it can't happen with everything. It's kind of crawl, walk, run, but we're rolling this out with our universal North wax line effective immediately. Next slide. We're also working with other sustainable products to develop new waxes. So as I mentioned earlier, where we came with our race line, it took us 30 years to get there, and now we're kind of at a reset, and we're trying all new waxes and different technologies and combinations and formulas, but we're rolling out more sustainable and more natural products as we move forward, and this will roll into the race line as we prove those formulas. Next slide. Yeah, we talk about soft goods, and there were some questions again, like what are we doing? This one, I'm not gonna get into it, but Europe has some pretty high standards in terms of apparel. And that's a pretty dirty industry. So we're doing a really good job with messaging what we're doing, how we're doing it, both with wool and with down. And it's pretty important. And this will all be on our hang tags moving forward. Next slide. I think one of the most interesting things about this slide is our RaceX Classic line, which is worn by many racers. Nobody even knows that it's 70% reprieve, which is recycled plastic bottles. So we're doing a lot with the recycled down, responsible down, global recycling standards, and all these products will start to have that messaging on the hang tags. Obviously, it'll be cardboard and recycled, but just making people aware of what we're trying to do to take care of the planet and do things in a cleaner fashion. Next slide. And the last point I want to make, and I hope I answered some of the questions. I'll follow up with some other questions that were in the slide deck. But one thing that I said at the beginning of the conversation is pick your wax line. Obviously, I trusted Swix when I was in the field. And it's really important that this slide here, I think, spells it out more than I can say. But this partnership with the US Ski Team, this wasn't driven from corporate to corporate. This was driven from the technicians on up. Whereas they wanted to have our wax and tools on Alpine and Nordic. And I think it says a lot that the US Ski Team is trusting us to be the official wax and tool supplier of the US Ski Team, and is definitely was a bottom-up driven initiative. And I think it's really important to understand. And next slide. Yeah, and that's pretty much the what's new in the line in a nutshell. And I'm looking forward to a strong 2024 season with everybody out in the Midwest. And as I mentioned earlier, if you've got questions, Yuri has my contact info. I'd ask that it be email, but if you have questions, we're here for you guys. Swix is definitely a brand that wants to push all the race service information out to you guys, so you have the best knowledge and can make the best skis for yourselves and your athletes. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Yuri, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'm getting my video back.
Okay. I'm getting my voice back.
Okay, well, thank you, Drew. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. I don't know, not sure how many people we ended up having today. So we will have a recording of this video, so we will share it with you. As Drew mentioned, if your questions haven't been answered, just send them to us, and we will get them to Drew and others, whoever else needed to be from the Swix side. And then just to remind you, we have a similar event on Wednesday, also at 7:30 with Ian Harvey from Toko. So I know many of you will be joining again. So I guess that's all we have for today. Thanks again all for joining. I will stop recording, and then yeah, we'll be seeing many of you again on Wednesday. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Yuri.